Record-breaking harvests, perfect weather, and yet Iowa's top farmers are destroying their own crops, because every bushel brings a deeper loss. This year, China has not bought a single soybean. Average losses now top $100 an acre, and the state that feeds America is facing bankruptcy, not bounty. How did abundance become a catastrophe? The answer begins here. Across Iowa, combines rolled through fields heavier than ever, pulling in soybeans at a state record pace, 53 bushels per acre, the highest average yield farmers here have ever seen. But instead of celebration, there is a sense of dread. The math is brutal. Every bushel of soybeans costs $11.15 to grow, but sells for just $9.40. Corn is even worse. $3.75 per bushel, about 50 cents below the break-even point. For most, every acre planted this year means losing $100 per acre, sometimes more. Multiply that by 1,000 acres, and the losses become staggering. Record. The pain is not just on paper. China, once the biggest buyer, has not purchased a single bushel of Iowa soybeans this season. Normally, by October, Chinese buyers would have locked in 300 to 400 million bushels from the United States. Instead, bins are full, prices are stuck, and the market is frozen. The Iowa Soybean Association estimates this trade freeze alone will cost the state's growers $1.5 billion in lost revenue, about a quarter of what they would expect in a normal year. Loss. Lance Lillibridge, a corn and soybean farmer, does not mince words. It is a train wreck for U.S. growers, he says. He is not alone. Across the state, farmers are making the impossible choice: harvest the crop and lose money on every truckload, or leave fields unharvested to cut their losses. Some are even turning under healthy plants, destroying what would have been a bumper crop, because the cost to harvest and haul it is just too high. Choice. Iowa State University agricultural economist Chad Hart puts it simply. Right now, the official number is 0. No Chinese purchases, no relief, just mounting red ink. For decades, Iowa's farmers have weathered droughts, floods, and trade wars, but never have perfect growing conditions delivered so much bounty and so much financial pain. The whiplash is everywhere. Record yields, record losses. Behind those numbers are families and businesses, pushed to the brink by a system where abundance no longer means survival. Brink. For Iowa's farm country, the crisis is not coming. It is already here. The question now is not whether farmers can grow enough, but whether they can afford to keep going at all. Future. Across Iowa, the numbers on farm ledgers tell a story that is impossible to ignore. Net farm income in the U.S. has dropped by nearly a third since the 2022 peak, erasing years of hard-won gains. In Iowa, the impact is even more severe. The Iowa Soybean Association estimates the state will lose $1.5 billion in revenue this year from trade disruptions alone, about 1/4 of what farmers would expect in a normal season. The break-even price for corn now hovers around $5 a bushel, but the market has not offered that for months. Instead, prices have slipped well below the cost of production. Fertilizer bills remain stubbornly high, and interest rates on operating loans have climbed, making every new purchase, from seed to machinery parts, a painful calculation. Even with yields that should have guaranteed prosperity, the cost of growing a crop now outpaces any possible return. This is a break-even problem turned crisis. Michael Langemeyer, an agricultural economist at Purdue, does not sugarcoat the outlook. He calls it pretty dismal for row crop farmers. Margins have vanished, and for many, every acre planted is a bet against the odds. Tom Adam of the Iowa Soybean Association calls the current trade strategy a bitter pill for agriculture. Farmers invested in technology, land, and equipment, but the global market has shifted beneath their feet. China's absence from the soybean market has left a gaping hole that no domestic buyer can fill. The picture is dismal. Input costs keep climbing. Machinery parts are up as much as 50% since 2020, and fertilizer prices, though off their peak, still eat up a larger share of every dollar earned. Interest rates have doubled or even tripled what it costs to finance a tractor or combine. For many, capital purchases are off the table entirely, and keeping old equipment running has become a matter of survival. Nationally, the trend is unmistakable. Farm income has fallen 30% in just 2 years. In Iowa, the cascade of losses is amplified by the state's reliance on export markets. The math is relentless, and the result is a system where even the most efficient, high-yield operations find themselves sinking deeper into the red. The economic logic that once underpinned American agriculture has turned upside down, and the consequences are rippling from the farm gate to the balance sheets of rural banks. In the first quarter of 2025, 88 American farms filed for Chapter 12 bankruptcy protection. That was almost double the number from the same period a year earlier. Iowa stood out with 12 filings in just those 3 months, second only to Nebraska. By June, the total number of farm bankruptcies nationwide had already reached 172, twice as many as in all of 2024, and the highest first-half count since 2021. These are not just numbers on a ledger. They represent family operations forced to surrender after years, sometimes generations, of steady work. David Weaver, a row crop farmer from Ogden, faced a reality he never expected. For the first time in his career, his bank denied him an operating loan. The reason was blunt: low commodity prices, shrinking export markets, and no sign of relief. Weaver's experience is becoming common. Increasing numbers of farmers are being denied loans they once relied on. The Iowa Farm and Rural Life Poll, surveying 1,000 producers this spring, found that nearly 80% believe the country is on the brink of another 1980s-style farm crisis. Over a quarter reported being denied or reduced on operating loans in the past 2 years. Many described tense meetings with lenders, watching decades of built-up equity erode as working capital runs thin. Banks point to the same culprits: weak grain prices, high input costs, and the loss of key export buyers like China. The Iowa Soybean Association estimates $1.5 billion in lost revenue this year from trade disruptions alone. For farmers, the safety net is wearing thin. The wave of bankruptcies and credit denials is no longer hypothetical. It is reshaping the landscape of rural Iowa, one farm at a time. On November 17, 2025, Hansen Mueller, one of the region's largest grain dealers, filed for bankruptcy. Just weeks earlier, Nebraska had suspended the company's license after payment failures rippled through 5 states. Now, hundreds of Iowa farmers are left waiting for checks that may never come. For many, the only hope of recovering even a fraction of what is owed comes from the Iowa Grain Dealers and Sellers Indemnity Fund, a safety net born out of the 1980s farm crisis and now pressed back into service. Claims must be filed by March. The damage is immediate. Cash flow vanishes, unpaid grain sits in limbo, and the trust that holds the agricultural system together begins to unravel. Dealers are not the only ones folding. Equipment dealerships across Iowa are laying off mechanics and salespeople as tractor sales drop 13% and combine sales collapse by nearly half. Logan Lyon, a former Iowa Corn Growers Association president, points to machinery costs as the final straw. He says it is not just the new iron. Parts are up 50% since 2020, and repairs that once cost a few $1,000s now run into 5 figures. Most of us just cannot keep up. Verna Hosek in Johnson County says they do not even buy equipment anymore. They just nurse along what they have. Federal aid, $10 to $14 billion more this year, on top of $31 billion already distributed, offers little comfort. Payments arrive months after bills come due, and nearly half of projected farm income for 2025 will come from government checks, not the market. Aaron Lehman of the Iowa Farmers Union says farmers are feeling a lot of stress. In some communities, the pressure has already led to tragedy. The suicide of an eastern Iowa farmer hangs over neighbors like a warning from the past. During the 1980s farm crisis, Iowa lost 110,000 jobs as towns hollowed out and families left. Today, with infrastructure collapsing and generational knowledge slipping away, many fear that once these farms and businesses disappear, they will not return. This year, Iowa's fields yield abundance, and yet their future stands on the brink. When global markets vanish and losses pile up, even the heartland's strongest cannot endure alone. What happens here now ripples through every dinner table in America. The cost of inaction will not stay in rural fields.